What'll I say to a man who has no desire to go on living?
I'm so glad you've come, Pastor.
Glad you called me, Laura. Where is your father?
He's right here. Come on in.
Hello, Joe.
Hello, Pastor.
Will you two excuse me just a moment?
We've been missing you down at the church lately. Thought I'd drop by and see how you're getting along.
Well, I feel pretty bad.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I at least hope you're up and about again soon.
Up and around? What for?
I guess you do feel sort of lost, not having to be at the plant every day.
Oh, got to be 65, they'd retire me, like they do everybody else. But it's not only the job.
Then what is it, Joe?
I don't know. It just seems like I'm no good to anybody.
You know, I never thought I'd hear you talking like that. You're not the kind to quit.
What's the use?
How about some coffee?
Fine, thanks.
No, thank you, Laura. I'm not feeling well. I think I'll lie down for a bit. You'll excuse me, Pastor.
Sure, Joe, and hope you're feeling better soon.
It's all right. Thanks for coming over, and I'm sorry I have to leave like this.
Sugar and cream?
No, thanks. I'll take mine black. It's good to see you again, Laura. How long have you been here?
About 10 days now. My husband and I came down for our regular visit to see Dad and found him like this. I couldn't just go away and leave him alone. And then when he told me he hadn't been to see a doctor, I called one in. But as I told you on the telephone, the doctor says there's nothing physically wrong with Dad.
Just what did the doctor say, Laura?
Well, he made a lot of tests. It seems that Dad is in pretty good physical condition for a man of his age, but I could look at Dad and tell that something was wrong.
Yes, you can certainly see that's true, all right.
I've been awfully upset. Dad has always been such a rock of Gibraltar, you know. I don't understand how he got like this.
Laura, when a person quits work for one reason or another, he no longer has the sense of being needed. No place or responsibility in life. Then he often just wants to quit. Say, what's the use? I'm afraid that's what's happened to Joe.
Maybe so, but what can I do, Dr. Goodrich?
Laura, if we're going to help your dad, we've got to make him feel needed and loved. I think the first thing I'll do is go over and see old Frank Russell. I've got an idea. Frank? Frank?
Why, hello, Pastor.
You sure do concentrate when you work, Frank.
That's a polite way of saying you must be deaf.
What are you doing here?
I'm making some toys for the children at the orphanage.
Takes a lot of toys for all those children.
Well, I sure keep busy, but what are you doing out in my neighborhood?
I've been by to see Joe Carver. He's in a pretty bad shape, Frank.
What's the matter with Joe? I didn't know he'd been sick.
He's not sick exactly. Even the doctors say there's nothing wrong with him physically.
Well, what's the matter then?
Oh, no, he's just given up, quit. Doesn't care to live.
Oh, not Joe Carver. I just can't believe it. Why, Joe's always been able to handle anything. Well, Pastor, Joe means a lot to me.
I thought that he did, Frank.
When I retired 5 years ago, I thought the world was coming to an end, for me anyway. Joe came along and helped me over the rough spots. What you've just told me about him seems mighty queer because Joe's the one who got me started making these toys.
Joe's always been the kind of a man you can depend on.
The fellows in the Bible class think so, too. Everybody respects Joe. Why, we all think so much of him that he just can't give up and quit now.
Frank, do you think you could get that over to Joe? how much you and the others depend upon him not to let you down? I think it would mean an awful lot in his life right now if you could.
I understand all right, and I'll sure do my best.
Thank you, Frank. See him as soon as you can.
All right, Pastor, I sure will.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hello, Laura. This is Dr. Goodrich. Tried to reach you a couple of times yesterday. You must have been out. How's your father getting along? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'd hoped maybe you could bring him to church with you in the morning. Well, I'd keep him out a bit all that I could. You know, just staying there too much could make him weak. Well, is there anything at all I can do? Well, don't forget, Laura, this is going to take time. By the way, have you heard anything from Frank Russell? Well, I'm sure that you will soon because Frank's very fond of your father and anxious to do something. Well, I'll stay in touch with you, Laura, and in the meantime, if there's anything at all that I can do, don't fail to let me know. All right, Laura. Goodbye. Hello, Mrs. Russell. This is Dr. Goodrich. Is Frank there? Please.
Come in, Pastor.
Hello, Laura. Sorry I haven't been able to get by since last week. How is your father, Laura?
I believe he's a little bit better, Dr. Goodrich. Won't you sit down?
No, I can't stay but a minute.
Frank Russell and a few of the others from the Sunday school class dropped by to see him, and it seemed to cheer him up a bit, but he's still a long way from being his old self. I'm getting awfully discouraged.
Laura, I've been wondering, how long has it been since you told your father that you loved him?
Well, Dad doesn't need to hear me say that. He knows I love him.
Yes, I know, but answer my question. How long has it been since you told him so?
Well, I guess it's been a long time, Dr. Goodrich.
You know, Laura, your father needs to know that he is important to someone, how much Frank Russell and the other men need him and count on him, that he mustn't fail them. But he needs something else, and that's where you come in. He needs to know how much you love him and depend on him. You see, for 20 years there was someone here in this house. Now there's no one.
But I came back. I'm here to look after him.
Yes, but if we're not very careful, that will only make him feel more useless. He needs to know you love him.
Hello, Dr. Goodrich.
Hello, Joe. How have you been this week?
I don't know. It's like I told Frank the other day. Oh, yes, Frank Russell came by to see me. Wanted me to be chairman of the greeting committee for the men's Bible class. But I told him I just wasn't up to it. Can't take on anything like that.
Now that you have some time on your hands, we're not going to be taking so many no's from you down at the church, Joe. Well, just wanted to drop by and see how you're doing, Joe. Glad to find you're better.
Well, I wish you wouldn't rush off.
I'll be back soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Dr. Goodrich. See you soon.
Goodbye, Laura.
Well, I'm afraid I've been a lot of bother to you the last 2 weeks.
You haven't either. I'm afraid I haven't been much help to you.
Well, that isn't your fault. I'm just no use to anyone. And I have no right to keep you here, away from Bill, or cause you to lose your job.
I'd about decided on quitting anyway.
You have?
Yes, I only took the job to help pay for the house, and Now Bill and I have about decided to have a family.
I'd always hoped you would.
But I don't know. The house isn't paid for yet. I don't know. I'm about ready to give up.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't? You know, when you love somebody very much, it hurts you to see them give up. Dad, can't you imagine how it makes me feel to see you just quitting like this? Ever since I was a little girl, I looked up to you and loved you in a special way. I don't know what I'd do without you.
Joe Carver's on the way toward getting a new lease on life. He'd never thought of himself as making any difference to men like Frank Russell and the others, certainly never thought of himself as important to their faith, and it did something for him when Frank told him how they felt. But the real turning point came when his own daughter, Laura, made him feel needed and loved. That was the difference between wanting to give up and go on. Laura's love for her father had always been there, of course, but she'd simply taken it for granted that he knew how she felt. Many of us are guilty of something like this. And yet you and I are often the factor which determines another person's attitude toward life. We ought to be sure that they know how we feel and tell them not once, but often. I have here a little booklet, The Story of Joe Carver. It tells in brief the story of this man who lost his incentive to live and how he found it again. If you'd like to have a copy, either for yourself or to give to someone whom you think it might help, I'd like to send you one free and postpaid. Simply take a card or a letter and address it to me, the pastor, in care of this station. And on the other side of the card at the top, write the word story, and then your name, your address, your city and state. Be sure to write the word story at the top, and I'll know what you mean, and then your name, your address, your city and state, and address it to me, the pastor, in care of this station. And I'll put in the mail to you immediately your copy of The Story of Joe Carver. You know, there's a sense in which I think we have an obligation to God to help other persons in this way. In fact, in the Old Testament, there is a verse which we might well take as a commandment. Any one of us could fulfill this command. The verse is found here in the book of Genesis. And thou shalt be a blessing.